Hi class, today we're looking at graphing polynomials day 2. What we're going to do here is we're going to go back into some of the concepts that we've already learned. The first one is looking at exponents and deciding what the end behavior is, also identifying the leading coefficient and the leading term. So before, when we looked at the leading term, we looked at an equation that looked like this, where it said f of x is equal to x cubed, or let me change that one. Let's do 5x cubed plus 6x squared minus 7x plus 1, right? And we put it in order, and the leading coefficient here would be 5x cubed. Or the leading term, sorry. The leading term would be 5x cubed. The leading coefficient would have been 5. So this whole thing would have been the term, and then this 5, this would have been the coefficient. All right, so what we're doing now is we're going to be looking at the graph. We're going to identify what it should look like. An idea, right? It's not going to be exact, but an idea of what it should look like. The problem here, though, is that the equation's already factored out completely. So it's not in this format. So the very first question says, is the leading term odd or even, right? And the best way to do this is to look at the exponents. Because mind you, we're going to have to multiply this, by this, by this, and by this. It's a long process. What we did, we undid an equation that looked like this and came out with the factored form. So the very first question says, is the leading term odd or even? And the best way to do this is to look at the exponents of your factors. So this has a exponent of 1, this has an exponent of 1, and this has an exponent of 1. This one's not going to be to any power because it doesn't have an x. So what I want you to do is that if there isn't anything, I want you to put 1. So 1, 1, and 1. Now, I don't know what the leading term is going to be exactly, right? But we do know that we do know. The leading coefficient is going to be what we pulled out. And then it's going to have x to the power of the sum of these. So we're going to add 1, 2, 3. So our exponent to our variable is going to be x to the third, right? With our number here in front. Now, is that exponent, is it odd or even? It's odd, right? All right, so I want you to go ahead and circle the odd. And then the leading coefficient, and this is the way that it's going to be formatted on your test. Your leading coefficient is going to be this number up in front, so it's 0.05. Is this positive or is this negative? It's positive, right? All right, so I want you to think back to end behavior now, right? So I'm going to go ahead. Let me erase all this real quick. So let's talk about end behavior. And so in behavior, you're going to look at your exponent, and you're going to decide, is this odd or is it even? Reminder that your evens are 2, 4, 6, 8. Your odds are 1, 3, 5, 7, and so forth. All right, and then once you decide if it's odd or even, what we did then is we said, well, if we have an odd one, they're going to be different, right? If it was positive, we imagine a positive slope. I'm not saying that it's going to be linear, but this would tell me that it's going from a negative towards a positive. And then if it was a negative, we imagine a negative. This one's going from a positive to a negative. Remember that? I know some of us didn't catch it, but we're going to try to get that down, okay? Okay, so now if it's even, this is when they were the same. This one was easier, right? Because if they were positive, they were both infinity. And if it was negative, they were both negative infinity. All right, so I'm going to leave that there just for a moment. I just want to make sure that if you need it, you have it. If you have your notes from the last unit, then you already have it, right? You just need to take out those notes. But if you don't have them, let me give you a moment to get that copied. Okay, so if we look at our exponent, we said our exponent was odd. So it was odd. So because it was odd, is our leading number positive or was it negative? It was positive. So it's an odd and it's a positive. It's odd and it's a positive. So it's a positive. Our end behavior is going to be negative, positive, right? Because if it's a positive, it's going to go up. So that is a negative towards a positive. Okay, now what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the zeros. Now yesterday, let me erase this real quick. Give me a second, I'm sorry. All right, so what you did the other day is you pulled the zeros from the graph. Remember when we looked at the graph and we said, oh, it's hitting here, it's hitting here, it's hitting here. And that's what we wrote down. Okay, so now we're going to go backward. We're going to find the zeros from the factored form and we're going to graph them. The way you're going to do this is you're going to look at your factors. If this is a positive 2, then your 0 should be a negative 2. If it's a negative 1, then your 0 is a positive 1. If this is a negative 5, then this is going to be a positive 5. Okay, so now remember I said if it has a U, it makes a 2, right? Like if it's even, it's going to have that U. It's going to bounce off the x-axis. Well, here they all have a power of 1. They're all odd. Do you remember what happens when they're odd? That's not the bumpy one, right? That means they're going to cross. All of them are crossing because they all have a power to 1. So now we're going to graph it. Okay, we're going to graph a negative 2. We're going to graph a positive 1. And we're going to graph a positive 5. Now, this side, the left side, has to go toward the negative. So I know this one has to come down. I know the right side has to go toward positive infinity. So that's going to go up. All right, and we know that the graph or the line is going to cross at all the zeros. So there's no bumping, there's no bouncing off the x-axis. So all we're going to do is connect them. So we're going to go up, connect down, connect up. Now, some of you might be asking, well, how do we know it's hitting at the 2? Or how do we know it's hitting this point? Or how do we know it's hitting that point? We don't know. We don't know where it's hitting at exactly. We're giving a sketch of where the zeros are and just the end behavior. So if someone's graph is maybe a little higher, maybe this one's a little lower, it's fine. All right, we're looking at the zeros and we're looking for the end behavior, okay? All right, let's try one more. All right, let's look at this one. All right, so remember your leading term. This is when you're looking at the exponents. You're going to look at the exponents. You're going to lead at the leading coefficient. So this is a power of 2, a power of 1, a power of 1. 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So that's x to the 4th, right, with our number in front. So this is odd or even. This is even. Good. Our leading coefficient is this number in front. So this is a negative 0.05. This is a negative. So it's even and it's negative. So if it's even, are they the same or are they different? They're the same. Good. And our leading coefficient is negative. That means they are both negative. So they're both negative. All right, let's look at our zeros. This is a positive 1, so it's going to be crossing at a negative 1. This is a negative 1, so it's going to be crossing at a positive 1. If you want to, you can put them up here. So let's say negative 1, positive 3. And then you can transcribe them back to the bottom, right? You can write them back at the bottom. Okay, remember, if your exponents are even, the only thing is that I would be afraid I may confuse those for exponents. So if y'all need to, go ahead. If you don't, I prefer that you just go here and then directly to here. Okay, so then looking at our exponents, this one's a 2. Remember, if it has a u, it makes a 2, right? This is our bouncing, so it's going to bounce off the first one. And then on 1, it's going to cross. And then on the 3, it's going to also cross. Let me repeat that one more time. This one's going to bounce because it's an even number. The exponent's even. This one's going to cross because it's an odd. This one's going to cross because it's an odd. Okay, so I'm going to make a point at -1, +1, and +3. And they're both going to go toward the bottom because they're both going toward negative. So I know this one needs to come down, and this one needs to come down. Now I know it's going to bounce off the -1. So I'm going to hit the -1, and it's going to bounce off. So it's going to come back this way. And then it's going to have to come back up and cross. Okay, so it's going to bounce, come down, go through, and then go through. All right, it has to bounce off the -1 because that had a power of 2. Again, I don't care how low this one goes, as long as it's obvious that it's coming down and up, right? We don't want to go straight. We want to make sure it goes down and up, as well as this one. We want to make sure it goes up. So even if it's a minor one, right, it's just barely going up, that's fine. If you want to go all the way up and be dramatic, that's fine too. Just make sure that you're making that graph, just sketching it, right, and not doing any straight lines. All right, class. On next week, on Monday, we all do have our review, which means our test is on Tuesday. That is the last test for the marking period. We are going to still take the homeworks for after that. After the test on Tuesday, all the homeworks that come into the next unit, we're still going to take those into the grade period, into the grading marking period. But as for tests, the last test will be the test on Tuesday, okay? So if you ever need to make up any tests, if you need to retest, please get with me, email me, let me know what day, what time works best for you, and I'll try to make that work, okay? All right.